I'm Spooner Oldham. How y'all today? It was sparsely furnished, that place. It was like a sofa and a chair and nothing there. Empty rooms. Back there, sometimes people would sleep there. I never did, I don't think, but somebody come in from out of town. It was a place you were allowed to hang out and sit around and look at the newspaper or whatever and talk or whatever. There was no specific goings on every day. Up over the city drugstore, Spar Music, it was called. It was a song publishing company, but it had an acoustic piano, a little recording room with a panel like a radio station. I'd never been in one that, looked like a recording studio, a little bitty place, but how do I say it? A lot of wannabe songwriters, producers, engineers, everybody, that thing that goes on with people like that. You just looking for something to do and trying to figure out how to do it. And so in that conglomeration of things, there was a mutual thing about music, I think. Some of us want to be songwriters, some of them want to be recording engineers. So, and Dan Penn was the only artist. I knew Dan Penn had written a song that became a hit called Is a Bluebird Blue that Conway Twitty had a record. So, and I'm starting to get interested in songwriting. And the one thing that they did have going on a regular basis was at Spar was Tom Stafford, the head honcho. They had a little record label called Earth Records, and Dan Penn was the only artist on the label. Tom Stafford said to me one day, I met a guy, he works at the Sheffield Hotel, or somewhere in Sheffield Hotel, and he's what do you call it, bellhop maybe. And I think he's written a hit song, and I had never heard that terminology in the shows because there really wasn't a lot of hits going on. And so it's an interesting thought. He thinks that, and so later I met Arthur up there at Spar and heard his song. I see what you're saying, yeah. But Arthur, he didn't play an instrument, but he wrote the songs and sang. Rick Hall had this little studio he put over on Wilson Dam Road, former tobacco warehouse, I was told. I don't know anything about that, but what I do know is he had an organ in there, microphones and a recorder, and he was mostly at that time doing songwriting demos for people. He was song publisher was really the idea, I think. And so there came a moment when I was asked to come over there, and I was a teenager. Would I come over and put organ on Arthur Alexander song, You Better Move On, which I did. Me and Sandy Posey, the singer, and Herschel Wigginton, background singer, now in Nashville, and Jerry, someone from Nashville. We shared one microphone and overdubbed on that song, but I was really young, teenager, When all that started blossoming around me, I think what really set me on fire is the possibilities of doing something in music was the Beatles and Rolling Stones started covering Arthur's songs, and so I thought, what a small world this can be, music travel fast. That became an obsessive thought, it's quick. I think Rick Hall called me one day, said, here at Fame, Dan Penn just signed, I think it's a 2-year contract. What would you need to do the same thing? I'd like to have y'all here as songwriters. And I said, well, I'm living with my parents. I'm a teenager. I smoke cigarettes. I got a car. It needs gas. I need $25 a week. Sign, That's what I did. So it was wonderful because we had access to these nice facilities, good sound. So Dan and I would write here. He played acoustic guitar, sings. I'd get on one of the keyboards, piano usually. And we'd finish the song and just play it once or twice, record it, a little tape. And within a week or two, the band would actually do a proper demo of the song, get all of us together, which is usually Roger Hawkins, Jimmy Johnson, Junior Lowe, David Hood a little later. Some of the earlier recordings was that became hits that easy enough to recall is like Jimmy Hughes, Steal Away. And then oddly, the next record I remember was Clarence Carter, Slip Away. And those, I think they're the same band. But those bands, they stayed together 3 or 4 years, and then it became a whole different section. I moved to Memphis, and another song cut here was a song Dan Penn I wrote called "I'm Your Puppet," and I played piano, and Barry Beckett played organ. So Barry Beckett had come up here from Pensacola, Florida, with Papa Don Schroeder, a record producer, radio guy in Pensacola, and I think he maybe owned a club or something. I think Barry played in that club, and so we did that. I met Barry, and he went back to Pensacola, and then a few weeks later, he and I went over to this little market next door. It's this drugstore now, CVS drugstore, but back then it was a little mini market or something. Went over to get a soda pop, and on the way back, he says to me, "Spooner, you think I could get any session work if I moved up here?" And Dan Penn, my writing buddy, had moved to Memphis a year prior to me going to Memphis with Chip Moman, who just built this American studio. And so Barry says, "You think I get the session work?" I said, "Well, I'm sure you can do whatever I've been doing." A Edison light bulb went off my head. I was trying to figure a way to be true to Fame and Rick and not just take off, have a replacement sort of. So that was my thinking, and he did do that. And he came down and had a great career in shows. But and then I went on to Memphis, and the way that happened is just Moman one day, he's playing guitar on Aretha Franklin sessions. After a couple of songs here at Fame, we went to New York and finished the album. And in the hallway one day, we're taking a break, just he and I, and he peeled out his wallet, 5 $100 bills. Said, "Why don't you come to Memphis and write with me and Dan?" Okay. And easy sale, So that's how I ended up basically in Memphis a couple of years. Rick probably never knew any of that. I don't know. I never talked with him about that stuff. Didn't talk to Rick about anything. But I could look to him more as a somebody on my same age level, but also I could look at him more of a fatherly kind of figure, I guess. And he was more entrepreneurial spirit than I ever dreamed about being at his age, wanting to build a facility of world-class standards, and do it well. So he he was intentional on pulling it off, you know, from the get-go. And he's a tenacious worker. To recall was that if you came in here with you were a record producer or a label owner or anyone, you brought a band or a singer in here, hired us to play, you can count on Rick Hall being the last man standing. He would not bail ship for any reason. He's gonna stay there till you get your work done. You know, come hell or high water. Yeah, I can tell a story about Percy. What I heard from my view, I'm just going to tell my viewpoint. Everybody's got a different story, but my story is I get a call. Would I come play a recording session of this new studio just opening up? Of course, I think I knew Quinn. I knew Marlon Green, who were the harbingers of the building. So they said it's the guy's first recording session, a record, and I think it's the first recording in the studio. So that was, you know, what they said to me on the phone. Sure, I'll be there. What day, what time, blah, blah, blah. And I showed up, and there was this red, shiny organ. You know, you're used to seeing these Hammond wooden, big old heavy things in studios. And so I thought, well, that's odd. I look at it, never seen one. And it made in Italy, Farfisa. And then a big old black Ampeg amplifier over here, about knee high. Turn the power on, the red light comes on. Turn the power on the organ, red light comes on. Volume up. It sounded like it had like two buttons. One was called a multi-tone booster, and the other, I forget what it's called. You didn't have much choices of sound. Two buttons. So I hit that first button. It sounded like 1,000 screaming bumblebees. Worst sound I've heard in my life. You know, terrible. I thought, well, I can see this guy. This is going to be a solo session, no way around it. I don't think. I can't use that. Push the other button, and it's the sound we hear on When a Man Loves a Woman, the recording, and my heart just felt good about it, you know, because I went from this screaming bumblebee sound to nice organ sound. That made my day brighter already. And then Percy, he's out there in the middle of the floor, stand up to a microphone. Roger Hawkins over here on drums and Junior Lowe on bass, and that was that day's session. They added horns and voices later, but Jimmy Johnson, I think, was back there on the 8-track board. And the way we knew when it was time to record, I think a little red light would come on the wall. And my memory, I can't tell you how long it took, but I'm guessing not over 15 minutes, you know, maximum. You know, so that's the way I went out in the lobby, looked at a Billboard magazine after we finished, and it had a full-page ad, which are probably expensive advertisements for. It said the Beatles are coming. I never heard of the Beatles, and no one else had, you know. That's that day when I remember those two things. Percy standing up there singing his heart out. We playing the best we could, and the Beatles are coming, you know. Anyway, the story I hear, and I think is true probably, they added the local horn players, Jack Peck and other names, section. They put it on a recording. And I hear that they sent it to New York, Atlantic Records, Jerry Works, said, there's one note on the end that's out of tune. Would you do that again? So I think replaced that horn section with the Memphis horn players. I was there that day. I saw them do this. I didn't know the other thing had happened, matter of fact. So what happened, I hear that in the end result, they used the wrong recording, which was the first one. So, so that's all I know.
It's not the Memphis Horns on the...
Right, they're on the contract, they're getting paid for news fees. If you see a commercial, they're getting paid. But like I said, I wrote letters. I don't think it matters. Your name's got to be on the form to get paid. It's all good. Good and bad. But so during that experience in Memphis, I lived there by myself, bought first new car, bought a house. Then I met Karen down here in the Shoals. She was visiting from Florida. Her best friend, Glenda, and my good friend, Grady, were dating, and they were engaged to be married. So I think Karen and I beat their marriage by like a week. And we immediately moved to Los Angeles. Essentially, my success in Los Angeles was I contributed a lot to a friend of mine, Chris Etheridge, who was in a band called Flying Burrito Brothers, and they were breaking up and doing solo albums amongst them, Graham Parsons. And so I'd play on their albums, and then some of the Bird stuff were breaking up. They were doing individual albums, so I was in on that. And then Terry Melcher, who'd been producing Power Generators and stuff, and the Birds, and he started hiring me to do whatever he was producing. So all of a sudden, I'm loaded down with things to do, and but I think Chris Etheridge introduced me immediately to these Southern California rock and roll people, and they started. I think it's a big part of surviving in this industry is people gotta like you. So I think they like me and I like them, and one thing leads to another. So we bought a house in Glendale. First place we lived, MacArthur Park, got a little apartment. And the powers that be, the studio owners, they said, well, you living over there at MacArthur, that's a drug dealing park neighborhood, and it was scared for you, and you need to get out of there. And so I had never knew it was happening there, wasn't bothered by it. So, but I moved, but Terry Melcher, he's a good friend, and he was Doris Day's son, which I never met her, but he's just a regular guy around me. We just, regular thing. But we did get wrapped up in that. He did get wrapped up in that Charles Manson story. What I read is he and a engineering friend of his went to the ranch out there where Manson and his gang lived, and I guess they'd heard stories about him singing and writing songs and wanted an audition, blah, blah, blah. And they took a little truck out there with a recorder and engineer. I don't really know much about it, except I understand that Terry didn't want to sign him to any kind of contract after that. And I think Charles Manson got peeved and was out to kill him. Therefore, he went to that house where these people were murdered, Sharon Tate, and that's the house he lived in prior, but he had moved, but they didn't know it. So the story goes that his people went back to Charles Manson and said, well, he's not living there anymore. We'll kill him anyway. They're pigs. So they went back, and so Terry was all of a sudden, I think a trial was coming up, and he wanted to sort of not be around him. They had one up to him at California cabinet. I asked somebody, what's he doing up there? He said, well, he sits in the corner with sunglasses and a pistol in his hand most of the time, scared. So I lived in Burbank a while, apartment, met Freddie Weller there. He and I started writing some country songs. Like one of those was Lonely Women Make Good Lovers. And he had 3 or 4 #1 country records as an artist singer, so he and I were writing together, so that was going on in California. And so one year we got 3 songwriting awards at BMI in Nashville while I was living out there. But a funny story about Freddie, he told me he was with the Paul Revere and the Raiders band in Europe at the time his record came out. Games People Play that Joe South had written. He said, somebody told him, you know, Freddie, you got like a #1 country record in the United States. He said, really? I didn't know that. He said, I guess I ought to quit this band. So he did. Became a solo artist, you know. But a lot of good things, a lot of good stories in California. And Bob Dylan tour was like 1980, 81. Karen was pregnant. So Karen was getting nervous. She said, you know, you ought to get a job at McDonald's or 7-Eleven or something. I said, oh, don't worry, it's going to be all right. And Bob Dylan called me and wanted to do a tour, and I said yes. And so we rehearsed out in Los Angeles several weeks, several days. I mean, I thought it was going to be spontaneous, top of the house, be ready for anything, you know. He's likely to do anything at any time, but we were well rehearsed, best rehearsed band in the world, I'm sure. Several days. But I think he was learning his songs he'd just written with a band, you know. So I understand it takes time to feel natural about new stuff. And then I remember the first gig we did was Warfield Theater in San Francisco. Bill Graham, you know, he's a popular music promoter. He had renovated this theater, Warfield Theater, and it had been shut down. Well, we were opening, grand opening, and Bob was sold out 2 weeks before we got out of the van. But we rode up the first day in a van, all the band and singers. And I'm looking out the window, and there's like 21-year-olds with posters, like reminded me of the 60s photograph, you know, like, I know they're protesting something, but what is it? I'm trying to read through the tinted windows, and I guess what it was it seemed to me like they were protesting his move from Judaism to Christianity. I guess is what that is. So and then another odd thing about theater would be full. Okay, we playing the first song, and everybody playing good, singing good, all going well. And the end of the song, and the other half, boo, boo, boo. I've never been booed in my life before. Didn't know what that's about, but I don't. It's either religion or it wasn't what they wanted to hear. You know, I want to hear whatever, like a Rolling Stone or whatever. He wasn't going to do any of that. It was all gospel Christian music, you know. So that was funny. But after about 3 days, they had all bought their tickets, protested, and then it sort of calmed down the rest of the tour, you know. But the story of Bob Dylan, his recording in the shows, was, as I understand it, he recorded an album at the new, later version of Muscle Shoals Sound Studio. Slow Train Coming that Barry Beckett and Jerry Wexler produced. I had nothing to do with that. It became a hit. Okay, and then when I got out Los Angeles to rehearse for a tour, he had just been writing these songs or that became a saved album, but all the thing I know is I remember just somebody had booked a studio over there, and we rolled up in a bus or whatever and spent about 3 days, recorded the album that we were already doing on the tour. So yeah, I don't really know how that came to be. I don't think I had anything to do with it. I was just a hired hand, you know. The way I tell about my songwriting, I think, is some days I'm receptive to want to be a songwriter or to write a song. And at that day, my antenna's right up here. Other days, I'm a little tired. I don't want to think. It comes way down, and I probably won't get many ideas. And there's other days I shut down intentionally. I don't want any part of it. Don't talk to me about song. Don't think about it. So that's the 3 areas I operate in. It's 0, 50%, and 100%. But, you know, you never know where inspiration is going to come from as a writer. I like what Dan Penn he's told me, these young writers in Nashville said, Dad, how do you write a song? Do you write from personal experience or where do you start? He said, just make something up.
How would you define or describe the Muscle Shoals sound?
Well, I don't know. It's just basically Muscle Shoals sound to me is anything that comes out of this area. You know, it could change daily. I don't think it has to be one thing. It remains to be seen what it is my answer. I don't want it to have an answer. I won't give an answer. But I hope the youngsters find a love for it and a way to get motivated and a way to explore the world that the music leads them to, you know, if they get an opportunity to get in a studio like this and really display their wares as well, you know, because it can be a tough business, really tough. Have fun with what you're doing or get out of the business or get another job, you know. It's that simple to me. It's no in between. Just if you aren't having fun, don't do it. I want to finish an album this year. I've started on it, but it's bits and pieces. I've got demos. I think I may overdub some instruments on. I've got some recordings on 1-inch tape. I got to bake a tape and convert it so I can look at it. And it's work to be done. But yeah, I'd like before the end of the year have an album out. And I'm like Grandma Moses was one of my inspirations. She was 80 when she became famous as a artist painting. I may not become famous as an artist, but at least that's my motivation, to be like her, you know.
I think you might already be famous.
Well, that's what people say but yeah, in certain arenas, yeah, famous as